Welcome to another episode of Hospitality Talks. Today, our guest is Tom Luersen. Tom is a hospitality industry veteran who has spent his career leading and growing some of the industry's most respected hotel and resort organizations. Today, he leads Coral Tree Hospitality Group and previously served as Chief Operating Officer of Two Roads Hospitality and Destination Hotels. Having grown up in the industry, Tom brings decades of experience and a deep passion for creating exceptional guest experiences. Beyond his professional role, Tom is actively involved in shaping the future of the industry through his work with American Hotel and Lodging Association Resort Committee and the Urban Land Institute. He's also committed to giving back to his community through Wonderland Express, a nonprofit that helps create memorable holidays for economically challenged and at-risk families in Central Oregon. I'm your host, Abid Butt. Please join me in welcoming Tom. Tom, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You have hospitality bloodlines. Your journey literally started at home with your dad being in the business. Tell me, what is your earliest memory of watching your dad and saying this was the business you were going to join?
It's such a great question, I should say. I think my early memories of him is first as a child and being able to be included in the lifestyle of a guy who was leading the largest hotel in the state. That meant going to events that were being celebrations. And as youngsters, of course, we had a great time and loved the grandioseness of that. What then I really remember, it's a kind of an odd memory, but my father's hotel was in Louisville, Kentucky, in downtown, and the largest hotel again in the state, and still is. And it was a very odd time when I was becoming a teenager, understanding a little bit more about the business. In particular, we're going through the country's segregation plan. And my father's hotel was in downtown Louisville, and there was a really segregated population. And Louisville, Kentucky was one of the cities that was earmarked to be a landmark city for busing. If you remember that term, that was to take people of color and move them out into the suburban markets and vice versa. And my father took a really unusual stance in that market. And I watched him become a leader of people, not of a hotel, but I watched him where he was criticized and he was a real fan of it. He thought it was really a great thing to help all people learn about each other. And he had a workforce that really stood behind him as a leader, that maybe in his peer group, he was getting some criticism for that. And he and my mother stood really tall, and they included the family members. And it was unusual at that time. I was in high school sports and playing sports, and there was a lot of misunderstanding of the time. And I was really proud of my dad. And, years and years later, my dad passed away. I remember telling those stories that I saw him of a man who wasn't someone called dad or the GM or the president. He was this leader of people who took a strong position because it was important for the employees of his company. And that resonated with me then. I still get choked up when I talk about it now. I was really proud to be a part of that, and it has stuck with me. So that was a really great experience for me to relate with later in life when I had more maturity to understand what my father was doing and how later in life I've had the chance to do that. So to get a bit of an unusual mixed bag of stories there, but that's the truth of the matter. That's when I really thought this is what I can do.
Well, that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Tom. Leadership attributes are challenging at times. So you grew up watching a great leader, not only at work, but in the community. So thank you for sharing that. You have a reputation of leading the company with family office mentality. As a matter of fact, if I understand correctly, third generation hoteliers are in the making, with your kids having come into the industry as well. Tell us a bit about what advice are you giving them as they have watched you growing up in the industry. What advice do you give them to be successful and to thrive in this wonderful industry?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm taking a bit of a chapter from my own father. My father did not coach me into this industry. If anything, he, I think, really worked hard to ensure that I didn't feel that burden and that he encouraged me to do other things. Later on, when I decided to take that career, my father was there as a mentor and someone who was trying to guide me in the best of his ability. I have much of that same kind of playbook with my own children. I did not encourage them to follow this career at all. I encouraged them to follow the things that they had passion for, and that at the end of the day, put our young people, including myself when I was in that role, thought, oh gosh, the hotel business, I'm gonna have to work hard, work long hours, and get paid averagely compared to the doctors and the professional services of the world. What we learned out later on, that's not true. One, our industry has so much change where you can make a wonderful life, and I've been blessed to do that. Two, there's a greater appreciation for someone's life. So what I want for my children, I want for my friends, and candidly, I want for the own team members of Tree, which is follow the heart, the things that you love to do, and good things will happen. Do things that you don't care to do and it becomes a job, the work will reflect that. And so follow your heart, um, care about people. I believe today, two of the new leadership traits that are spoken about in this decade that weren't spoken about in the decades that I was growing up is vulnerability and empathy. Empathy by definition means to care for other people. I didn't say employees, I didn't say bosses, I didn't say kids. I said just other people. Care for humanity and want good things. And vulnerability is to say, I've been blessed to be in this business for 40 years, and good knows I've made so many mistakes I could never count. But if I can show that vulnerability and uh, get up the next day and come to work to be better, I can share that with other people. I put on my shoes the same way anybody else does. I have same burdens of life with parents and children and pets and friends and all those things included. So let's be one of the same, work together with the same values and do great things. And that's what I want from my children at home. I want them to be happy. I want them to live a life that they don't have regrets and they can do good things in.
Well, that's wonderful. Empathy is amazing. And honestly, after having spent all these years in the industry, I still have to make sure that when you are communicating with whomever that is at work, in your friends group, at home, that stays front and center, because at times under pressure, you tend to put that aside. But thank you for sharing that. I think that's a great segue, Tom. You talked a little bit about the changes in the industry. Let's put your lens of service. Tell us what service has meant to you. How have you seen that evolve over the years?
It's an interesting question, and I think a lot of people will ask questions about service and expect me to talk about some revelation. And oddly enough, I don't. I talk about the same things that I want today, I wanted as a 10-year-old, the same things my parents want. I wanted someone who greets me with a smile, who cares about my stay, and that the quality of my experience in the place that I am can be fulfilled. I want a relationship. I'm someone who's going to tell you about the wonderful food that I had. I'm going to tell you about the wonderful view from my guest room or the wonderful finishes in the design. But what I'm going to really spend more time telling you about is Bob, the bellman, or Mary, the front desk clerk, or Wanda, the housekeeper, who I got to know. Those stories are impressionable, and it goes back thousands of years in our industry, right? Where we're always providing a place for someone to sleep. They had to pay for it, and there was competition for that. And the way you won that was to win over their hearts. That hasn't changed. How we do that has changed a lot. We have our tools. If the tools is metaphorically in a thing called a toolbox, our toolbox is wider, deeper than it has ever been before. We can find out data about our guests. We can find out where they've been, what their preferences are. We can find out what their allergies are in the cuisine. We can find out if they love spas. We can find ways to talk to them and communicate. But at the end of the day, the service element, in my opinion, hasn't changed that much. It's just those that can stay focused in on that in light of the economic pressures and complexities of our industry, they're the ones that win. And for our company at Coral Tree, that's a real focus. At the end of the day, I don't care if you're at a five-star property or a two-star property, you take care of your guest and they'll take care of us in the long haul. That won't change as far as I'm concerned.
Well, are the travelers' expectations evolved over a period of time? Because if we could travel back in time, some of the things that we all take for granted today were luxuries back then. Today, maybe somebody with white gloves standing right next to you, almost subservient, maybe that is not what travelers desire. Maybe it's unobtrusive service. Maybe it is knowing the people that you are going to be serving and what their likes or dislikes are. How has that evolved, and what is Coral Tree doing to train and develop people so that that service delivery is successful?
Yeah, great question. And the proliferation of global brands, any one of the big four has somewhere between 25 and 35 brands. And that's because the data and the information of our guests is so much more acute than it ever was before. Before, we would find things out that they want a comfortable bed, or they're going to arrive late for business, just spend the night and be out by 6 a.m. in the morning. Let's make sure the coffee is hot in the morning. The details that's available to us now has created this brand tiering. In our space at Coral Tree, we lean heavily more toward the independent side, meaning non-flagged. And to do that, we're kind of in a David and Goliath story where we're small compared to a Marriott and a Hilton and an IHG and a Hyatt, et cetera. So we have to be able to move faster. We have to deliver more effectively, and we have to stay attentive to everything around us. And we don't have a large R&D department. We don't have those types of resources. So, we're using technology. We're teaching and training service. Sometimes we talk in the industry about training, but we don't deliver it. We think training happens when you arrive and you go through orientation and you do shadow training if you're a front desk or a culinarian or a spa esthetician. And then it stops. We have to stay focused on relevance. Our leadership has to have a entrepreneurial mindset. They can't be in a world of compliance. Our company is not a company made up of standards. It's just the opposite. It's an inverted model where we believe the leadership and the power belongs to the property. It's hard I don't care what your company name is, to be managing and leading in real time today a hotel at another marketplace in another state. I'm in Denver, Colorado, where our Coral Tree headquarters is, but we manage properties all over the country. I am not equipped to make real-time decisions that best serve the guests of our needs. I need to hire the right people that do that. So one of the greatest changes is learning how to assess entrepreneurialism. How do we find people that are capable of making decisions, are desirable of accountability? Some people love empowerment, but without accountability, that's dangerous, right? So we've got a lot of tools that we've enhanced about selecting the right talent to deliver in our niche this independent mindset, this ethos at a property that's very customized. So those things are like behavioral tools about how to assess someone and how they show empathy. Are they really a teamwork player? Do they really collaborate, or are they really more independent minded? Tell me how to do my job one time and I'll call you if I need you. That's not what we're looking for in our company. So just the tools available to us allows us now to do things that over my 40 years, we never thought about doing. And we didn't have the tools. So we can move faster, be more customized, and that's only going to get better going forward. We're just at the tip of the iceberg.
Fair enough. There is lots to unpack there. In terms of organizational culture, you have to be able to provide what I call psychological security for people to feel comfortable making the decisions so that as long as we haven't gambled the bank, it's okay if I was wrong as long as I have thought it through and it was based on the right rationale. The outcome could possibly be different than what I might have expected. As you said yourself, all of us throughout our careers, we have made mistakes and probably will continue to make mistakes until the day we leave this beautiful earth. I don't think there is anybody that can say that they have never, ever, ever, ever made mistakes. What do you do to provide that psychological security so that people are not going to be intimidated in making that decision, in taking that call, whatever that happens to be?
I think your narrative there is brilliant. And it's kind of in the modern hotelier in the sense that I always make a metaphor. I love sports so much. And I'll make one to basketball that is about mistakes. And I use it all the time in our employee culture, which is look, in the game of basketball, they give you 5 fouls. And at the end of 5 fouls, you're asked to leave the court for the rest of the game. Can you imagine playing a competitive game and you walk off the court and you say to your coach, Coach, I had a great game. I didn't have any fouls. And the coach says, Gosh, that's great, Tom. But what if you would have tried to steal the ball one time? And maybe you would have got a foul, but maybe you would have taken a shot that you gave up for someone else. Those were mistakes. So what I say here is that we need people to make mistakes. If no one makes mistakes, what are they doing? They're playing safe. If you play a basketball game for 40 minutes and you didn't have a foul, you played safe. I'd rather you take a little bit of a calculated risk, try some errors, and celebrate that. And to the earlier comments, show vulnerability, tell stories, right? The world of hospitality is at the end of the day, many of us leaders are storytellers. Tell them the time when you made a mistake. I made a mistake. I hired the wrong person. That was my decision. And let me tell you how I made a mistake and what I've learned from it. By the way, sometimes I, had a bad guest experience and I gave away a free room. And maybe I could have done something different when I was a front desk clerk. Maybe it wasn't a free room. Maybe it might have been that I could have offered them breakfast. But I want to create an environment where approachability is important, that people feel trusted and that they don't need to live on such the edge of perfection. They need to be living on the edge of entrepreneurialism, which says, I'm going to try different things. Some things will win and some things will fail. But if I don't try them, I'll play safe. And I play safe, I'm going to be like everyone else. Our company at Coral Tree, we can't be like everyone else. In order for us to be competing against global companies, we got to do things slightly more aggressive, slightly more calculated, and be prepared for that risk. And sometimes it's as silly as celebrating, a mistake. We're really good at teaching people about praise, showing praise and hoping people will follow the praise and recognition we give to others. You need to do the same with failure and say, look, Tom made a mistake. And you know what? He came and told me about that mistake. And I'm really proud that he did that because I know the next time it won't be a mistake. It's going to be awesome. And that culture will start to manifest in our company of thousands of employees. I believe that is done because it's a consistent way of life. It's not a once in a while we'll do it. It's got to be an everyday behavior that creates that comfort and trust within the organization.
Well said, Tom. I'm going to stay on workforce, if you don't mind. How have you seen that evolved? A few years ago, Wall Street Journal had an article, what they deemed how the business world will manage the trophy babies, because if two teams are playing, the winning team gets the trophy and the losing team gets the trophy. Well, business world might not work the same way. Also, the industry appears to be at a bit of a crossroad because the younger generations, the millennials and Gen Zs, they are not necessarily looking at this industry as a career. I was sold the career growth and I fell into it and I have loved every bit of my time that I have been able to spend. and consider myself very fortunate. What have you seen? How has that workforce evolved and changed? And what can the leaders in today's world need to do to make sure that we are looking after people?
Yeah, boy, that's such a in-depth question and an important one for our industry. You and I could spend hours on that. So I'll try to cherry pick my first reactions to your question is one, much like service, it's never been an easy labor market. If my father was, bless his heart, still alive, he'd sit here and say, look, son, you don't know what it was like hiring bellmen when they just, finished war because they were in the draft. So if you think you have it hard now, think about then or back in the time in the Depression. So I just think there's always been challenges in the generation that we live within, right? So we're the generation of technology. We're the ones that will remember the things called COVID babies today and COVID careers. And later on will be the advent of AI technology and how it changed industry. But the end of the day, that has those types of changes, albeit the specific of the change. I think that's what's always been going on, right? We've lived through double digit interest rates. We've lived in, wars. We've lived in a religious crisis so that are globally that impacted travel, which impacts our industry. So today, yes, we've got a generation of children that are the most educated class of people in the history of mankind. My grandchildren who are 4 and 5 can work at a computer better than I can probably. Maybe that's an assault on myself more than it is a compliment on them. But that's a blessing, right? The blessing is that people are being educated. We can travel around the world. Where when I was growing up, that was for the extreme affluent to travel international and see other cultures and see how other people live. The world has become smaller through the advent of more technology, the ability to travel. That's helping our workforce be better educated on what it's like to greet someone who may not speak our language and has to communicate through body language or others. We're learning more about cuisine at the upper upscale and luxury level. I can hire culinarians that are coming from around the world. They've never experimented in American cuisine, and yet now they're intrigued by it. So I still think it's, I ask our leaders to make sure they're very current on world affairs, very current on what our travelers like so that we can adapt to them. It becomes the same. There's I used to a couple of years ago where you had panels all the time and you were being invited in and someone would say, isn't it crazy? These millennials, they're coming to work for us and boy, they're lazy. And I just would take the different approach, which is you've lost your mind. These are the most educated college students we've ever had. They know what they want. And by the way, when we know what we want from them, we'll be catching up to them. It's not the other way around. And I happen to be the parent of 3 that I've watched grow up in this decade and watch what they've done and how they're going about it. So I think that labor market, the talent pool, how we prepare the future, this industry is a special one. I started cutting grass, right? And here I am leading company of thousands of employees around the country. Not every industry has that pleasure. So did I know exactly this is what I wanted to do? I didn't want to be a president of a company. I wanted to be in the hotel business. Wasn't sure what it was, but now here we are. It creates an opportunity. When I started to pick for schools, there was 4 or 5 universities around the U.S. that were noteworthy: Cornell, Michigan State, Florida International, UNLV. Today, the education for hospitality and the careers, they're abundant. They're here just here in Denver, Denver University, Metro University, University of College of Mines. They all have a hotel program. So now this industry has recognized, like Europe did, that there's a professionalism that comes with this, and people can make a wonderful living, provide for their families, and do special things. So it's a melting pot of all these ideas. It's not one, but when you start to recognize that, I see it as my glass being half full, not half empty, is that these are great things that I need to adapt to in leading a company so that we'll be ahead of the curve. And I'm never there, by the way. I don't think I've ever achieved it, but I'm going to strive for it every day.
Well, we must keep doing that. And honestly, I couldn't agree with you more. The younger generation is possibly one of the smartest generations ever. I can tell you about our son, having watched him grow, much, much, much smarter than the dad. The way he looks at things, the way he debates with you. It is very, very, very refreshing to watch that. I'm going to pivot a little bit. Earlier in the conversation, you alluded to the big companies versus Coral Tree. Now, you yourself have leaned more towards independent, you leading one of the largest independent operators. Talk a little bit about what benefits would independent hotels offer, and what challenges does it present? There is a lot of conversation about the scale in quote unquote loyalty. And I use that word a little bit loosely because I'm not sure if there is any such thing as loyalty, but maybe we can spend a little time on that. So tell me, what challenges are you up against when you're talking to the owners, when you're talking to the associates, and also when you are acquiring guests to come and visit your hotels?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I do lean both behaviorally and intellectually toward the independent space. I'm a person of curiosity, always have been. I want to swim upstream just to see if I can, right? Versus swimming downstream with everyone else. It's a little bit of my own behavior. If I go to Europe, I don't want to necessarily go where everybody else goes. I'd rather go where the locals go and explore and immerse myself into that. So that's a mindset. I found a path in our company or to our company that allows that entrepreneurialism, understands the customization in the independent space. I believe for me, one of the reasons that attracts me is that very immersive in everything, not a specialist in one area. I'm a loyalist, so I know how to work our point system, or I can execute the brand better than any other company can. And there's 1,000 of other types of properties around the world. That's a wonderful business model, and many big companies have been hugely successful. We try to do the opposite, which is let's customize the experience for the customer. If you're going to be in Central Oregon at Sun River Resort, we're going to have Marionberry on the menus for dessert because it's local, right? We're going to ask the CEO of that business to think how they can garner that business. Very different than a property we have up in Boston. In Boston, we're going to ask that general manager to do the same. So, one, that independent belief is, again, you're repeating some of my words here, but is very entrepreneurial, uh, very agile in the sense of making decisions, and is responsible. I'm that person who says, give me the keys, tell me what you want, what you're trying to achieve. Let me work with you on that. If I need some help, may I come back to you and seek your advice and counsel, and then give me some space to go do it. And that is a very special niche of ours. So that part I like. How do we, for the guest, and how do we compete business wise is to really figure out and study a market opportunity. If there's an acquisition that we can acquire right now, we're doing something in Florida, and I've been there and visited it, and I've studied what our competition is doing. I've studied the guest profiles and what the future guest profiles could look like, tried to do a gap analysis on where that experience can be met and not met, what the price sensitivities of that were, leaned first looking at independent, second guessed myself and said, what if we were to put a soft brand or a hard brand on it? What could be the outcomes? And we're leaning now back toward the independent because we think that at the end of the day, it allows us to customize in this particular market, like we have in others, what the guest really wants versus doing something that's spinning toward the local guest, but has a standard that must be compliant about a brand that's global. So that's a really important part. We think the lodging industry, the complement to that is all things but lodging: food, beverage, golf, recreation, spa, wellness, all those things. So for us, rooms revenue becomes ancillary to the other revenues because we're so busy in these full service resorts doing other things. There's a great opportunity there. We like that independent space, and we don't manage about the highest occupancy and the highest average rate does the best. That's to expect it. Ours is what's the combination of all the revenue sources, which ones are the most profitable and most desirable by the guest, and then let's deliver that the greatest. I love the complexity of that. And that allows you to kind of do things that others can't do. You have to customize your approach at the individual asset level versus having platform decision for everybody. For us, it's at the individual property where the decisions are made, and we create stories that become monetized and profitable for our owners.
Fabulous. Now, having said that, your own career in independent space, and you talked about that you intellectually you lean more towards independent. Your most recent partnership and investment with Outbound Hotels. Can you talk a little bit about that, and also Magnolia? How does that fit into the space? Are you trying to develop a brand, and if so, how does that change your ethos?
It's a great question, and you're astute for asking that. So Outbound is a brand new brand. We have 4 operating properties around the United States. We have 2 more that are under renovation and expansion and will reopen. It's a brand that's going into high barrier markets. What's a high barrier market for our audience? That's a place where it's expensive to get into. Doesn't matter if it's just hospitality, it's a place to live or work or play, it's expensive. So our outbounds that are started, we're in Jackson Hole. On Friday night and Saturday, I was down in Sedona. We just opened a property in Sedona, Sedona Outbound, Stowe, Vermont, Mammoth, California. These are properties, Park City, high barrier markets. The product is an upper upscale experience, but it is not luxury. It is anything but luxury. It's a place where people of many demographics, that's a key attribute here, will want to come in, enjoy the property, enjoy the benefits of the property, but also get out and about, enjoy the natural resources of what that high barrier market is. Maybe it's the mountain regions, maybe it's the beach, maybe it's the ocean. So we decided that that's a brand that's got a lot of flexibility in it. In hotel talk, that would be a soft brand. Outbounds the brand. The way the architecture is done in Stowe, Vermont, when we just reopened it, or in Sedona is very different. They don't all look alike. They have the same feeling, the same spirit. They're in these different types of high barrier markets. I believe that the educated traveler who wants to go experience these unique places is looking for a place like me that can wear his shorts, put on a ball cap because of he wants to over the weekend, have a wonderful culinary meal, and go out and about and do it with my friends, my children, my grandchildren. All those demographics want the same thing. That's very different in other types of brands that typically are going after one specific demographic, a business traveler or a luxury. This particular brand is going to have a broader appeal, and it's going to exasperate local amenities. So I feel really good about that. We've got a great partners in this, a company called Waterton out of Chicago and Bearings out of the Northeast, people that have similar mindset. Coral Tree is an investor in the real estate and also a co-owner in the brand. So this is of taking our experiences in the independent, creating a soft brand in world-class locations and bringing guest experiences together. We think it's going to be something very special.
So, is Outbound betting big in nature first, outdoors experience, bringing more outdoors into your daily activities at the resort? Would I be correct in saying that? And if so, why do you think that segment is more resilient?
Yeah, I might switch your words a little bit. Maybe not nature, but I would say experiences. This is an experience brand. This is a brand where you don't go check in and never want to leave the hotel. It's quite the contrary. I did it on Friday night. I went into Sedona, had a wonderful dinner. Saturday morning at 5 a.m., I was up and walking the trails that are going up into the canyons that are world class in terms of views and if you like the outdoors in that market. So Outbound is playing heavy on the experience side of things. That's why I believe you don't have to be affluent. You can be. I was traveling there with a couple of CEOs who then had their children with them. One was a 16-year-old in particular. He was having as much fun traveling and doing the things outside that we, the parents or the older folks around, if you will, were doing. So we're betting on the notion that the future traveler is going to want more than just a hotel. They're going to want an experience. They're going to want to do it with their generational family members, and generational family members want to go where they can all do things together. Not, well, okay, well, grandma and grandpa, I know you can't hike, So we'll see you later. We've created this brand that's going to really attract a broad audience. And I think here, it's like me saying, I like the independent space, so I go where the locals go. That's what we're going to do here. We're going to take that concept and apply it to outbound.
Amazing, amazing. Now, staying on your growth strategy, another segment that Coral Tree has excelled in is the residential resort component. Talk a little bit about that. That's a totally different segment, possibly requires entirely different skill sets for people on the ground to be able to manage that. What has made Coral Tree successful? What are the commonalities in different segments? And how are you able to deliver the value?
Well, the way that we see, I'm going to call this vacation residence management versus traditional hotel and resort. They've been around for a long time. Our company, our first operating business was at a property called the Gant, which is in Aspen. Beautiful independent property. Our founder, Bob Lowe, built it and was all said and done. He finished it in real estate and they came to him and said, find us a good operator for it. Long story made short, he said, why don't we do it? That was the birth of our first company. And so that was in today's terminology, that was called a condo hotel. They weren't using that vernacular back in those days. But the common thread for us is our experience in these high barrier markets. We started in business in Aspen 53 years ago, and here we are now talking about outbound in similar like markets, high barrier markets. In those markets, it's where the individual homeowner is affluent, usually has a second or a third home. Um, they want to be there when they want with their family. They may not need rental income, but when they see that they can be in these high barrier markets, they can only be there a couple of weeks out of the year. An alternative for them is to find someone they trust, build a trusting relationship with a manager who will take care of their individual unit, put it in a rental program, and maybe not cover their full investment, but cover their expenses, the HOA, all the utilities, all the things that are there, whether you're there or not, you've got fixed expenses. So that's for us been a common thread. We see that running a hotel and resort versus running vacation residences, they have a lot in common, but there's a lot of nuances. For me, I'm someone who has a home that our company manages this. And I appreciate the rental income that I earn. But what's more important is that the team that manages my home knows that we want our home taken care of. And that when my family arrives, I don't really want to feel like someone else had been in my home the night before that I didn't know. They work that they really trust us. They know what's important to us. They give us welcome notes. They do special favors for us. So that's a little different care for that individual homeowner than what you would do in a traditional hotel environment. What we blended together is the back office. We need data, we need accounting, we need finance, we need HOA skill sets, we need human resources and training. But we've decided to manage them as sisters to one another in the business platform, overlapping because the care is just so different. As long as our country is seeing discretionary income high, which it is right now, we're going to see these second and third and fourth homeowner markets continue to evolve. And we need providers who provide care to the homeowner first and then can deliver trust and some rental income to them. That's a different behavior than what we want of a hotel owner. We think that's a market that's going to be timeless. We started 53 years ago, been through all these different cycles, and here we are in that same business today. Now we've got a few thousands of units, around 2,500 around the country that we manage, and it's a very unique platform. Different systems to some degree, different outcomes, but we're merging the two together. And at the end of the day, we're taking care of the homeowners, we're taking care of the guests, and taking care of the team members.
Superb, superb. And I'm sure these homeowners really appreciate it because homeownership is very personal and very emotional. Going into a hotel room, yes, you connect with the team and how the team makes you feel, but home is very, very personal to me. And if somebody comes and stays in my personal place, I want to make sure that my place is looked after and the people that have been there, they are looked after. Let's shift gear a little bit. And no conversation in this day and age will be complete without discussing technology. You brought up a little bit earlier Let's talk specifically about the operating methodology and guest acquisition or distribution methodology. What has changed? How are you deploying technology to win in these two battles?
So, um, revenue, guest acquisition is the name of the game in the independent space, as we talked about, because we're competing against much, much larger aggregated companies and brand power. We have to be more acute at that than anyone else, in my opinion. I'm pretty proud of what we're doing. First is we're making mistakes. As we said before, we've hired some groups to help guide us in our decision making, and I'll never forget one of them were visiting our office and ran into him. And, I said, hurry up and fail, would you? And he's like, what'd you say? I said, just hurry up and fail. And so I had to explain the same thing that we talked about today, which is, we're going to try some things. We're not going to sit around and wait for all this to be tested. That's a slow adopter of technology. We have made the absolute statement internally that we are going to be an early adopter. We realize there's going to be some obsolescence that's going to occur. It's already occurring, but we're also not going to be all things to everything. We can't take on this unknown big elephant, if you will, of AI and say we're going to do everything. So we are focusing in on distribution. We're focusing even more so on distribution than on data management. How can we aggregate our data in a more succinct way so that we can access it quicker to find out, by way of example, we've got one of our best locations up in Suncadia is the name of the property in Washington State. It's a great golf destination. I want to be able to go through AI within seconds and find out who within 600 miles of our, 50 years of a database would have interest in coming to play golf over the weekend of Labor Day, and get out in advance of that and target not just geofencing, but target that customer base on their experience and what's in our database and gather that information. 2 years ago, that would take me 3 or 4 weeks to gather that information, slice and dice it, reprogram it, etc. We can do that now in a day. So we're doing it. It's working. We put out new packages. We're doing something for the 4th of July now that I think is going to set new standards in our company for booking. So distribution is critical for us. We need people to shift from the SEO mindset, right? As those are going to be going away to more of the G search. And what does that look like? How do we put ourselves in there? Our technology, I don't go to a regular browser anymore, probably like you. I go to Copilot, or I go to Perplexity, or I go to Claude and say, I'm getting ready to take my children to Greece and I want to do something on the water. What should I do? In seconds, I've got options. So now the hotel and the resort, has to be feeding the data to where those searches are coming on, and we're doing those things now. Um, it has so many more applications. In our area, we're focusing in on the way we're approaching the big elephant, metaphorically, is data, asset preservation. I'm a believer that AI can help us to predict the future. When do roofs need to be replaced on our resorts? When do HVAC units, when do asphalts need to be replaced? When do mattresses need to be replaced? We used to hire firms to do replacement studies. We can now do that with real data in, less than a couple of hours for complicated 300, 400, $500 million assets. And then going back to an earlier discussion, not just in that area, but in the employee side. What are the tendencies that we can model using our employee base today that are attributes of behavior that we have found to be success, that we have to emotionally deduct from a resume and a conversation? How now can we use AI to scrub those tools, resumes, work history charts, to help us hedge against turnover? These are just 2 or 3 or 4 ways that we're exploring the use of technology, and we're just scratching the surface. We're just on the tip of it. So I'm really excited about it. So much so, the hardest thing for, I think, any company to do, figure out where to start, who to start with, how to judge it. No one has a lot of experience, so you have to take some risk there and pick somebody, be able to make some decisions, and then we need to redeploy. Sometimes our industry has a way of collecting. It's like my garage, right? We collect everything, but we don't get rid of anything. We don't purge. So we need to take on the new systems and replace the old ones, not have team members running both. to be safe. We need to show that we're all in, and that's a mindset here. So we're going to make sure our metaphorical garage is clean. We're going to purge the things that we're going to put aside and replace with something new, and we're going to help our team members internally understand that we're going to give it a shot. And we're seeing results. We're seeing that we can get something put together on data in 24 hours and actually get a return on the investment weeks before that would have. When you're in independent space right now, moving fast is the secret to success. So those are just examples of ways that we're trying to deploy technology, mostly centered around the AI.
I was reading an article earlier that talked about how recruitment has changed a great deal, and the article was taking a bit of pun on that candidates use AI to develop their resumes. Employers are using AI to vet the resumes. It's kind of like Google talking to Siri and Siri talking back to Google. So I'm not sure if we're getting smarter at it or are we regressing? Staying on the technology theme, um, operational efficiencies, are you anticipating that this will give us some operating efficiencies? There is a lot of conversations about that some of the mundane, time consuming things will now be able to automate. And in that vein, on operating efficiencies, I believe it was McKinsey that had written an article. Is budgeting the traditional way of budgeting? Is it still applicable in today's age? And is the traditional budgeting killing the strategy? Your thoughts, Tom?
Boy, it's a great question. I haven't given much thought to that. I'll start with the latter end of that question on the budgeting. I think, is traditional budgeting, zero-based budgeting still taking place? The answer is yes. What I would say is years ago, budgeting in an organization like ours would take 6 months. You'd start in August and complete it by the end of the year. And, you just always thought as soon as I finish something, I'm starting another thing. Because the data is more available and it's more efficient in getting it to you, the distraction of putting together an annual business plan to an organization can be big, be a lot. That all by itself, it's much shorter. We're also able to go into an AI platform today and say, we just finished the month of May. Go ahead and take the same assumptions from those 31 days of May and put it into a temporary model based upon the same influences of that budget going into next year, and doing that right now in real time. And again, notwithstanding here are privacy rules about how financials get shared, et cetera, but those are going to happen. Am I someone who believes that AI is going to reduce our workforce? I do believe it's going to impact our workforce. We had the same argument. You can recall this 40 years ago when this little thing called the internet got talked about. And is the exact same vernacular as technology coming, look out, workforce. You're all going to be replaced with browsers and these things. And did that happen? The answer is yes. It shifted. We now have companies like Google and Meta, which are the largest employers in our country, right? And they created jobs. And yes, did some of the other jobs change? The way I think about technology in the workforce is that if it can help me do what's most important, right back to the simple things, communicating and talking to a guest so that their experience is memorable. So memorable they'll want to come back. If I can free up a front desk agent from answering a phone while a guest is standing in front of me, and making that little gesture of wait 1 minute while I finish this call, and let the telephone be answered by a really good agentic agent, and let the guest who's dealing with the front desk clerk feel really served. I don't think that's labor reduction. I think that's labor redeployment. And that allows us to give more focus on the things that we should be focused on, and let more efficiency occur where that can be a benefit. Have we figured all that out yet? I know I haven't. I haven't figured out exactly where that is. There's been low-hanging fruit. The old PBX operator that I grew up with, which was manually moving telephone lines from one plug to another plug, that doesn't exist anymore. That can be done through an AI who's got a wonderful voice and can be responsive, sound very human-like, can continue to learn. That's helping us. But that allowed me to have a couple more concierge to upsell, right? Another hostess, whatever it may be. So I think we're going to learn a lot. It's creating jobs right now, other than the data centers that are being built around the country, which is the number one real estate segment there is. The second new segment is industry looking for those that want to be in the AI specific field, just like the internet. So I just think we're shifting. I don't think one is going to replace the other. We're all going to adapt. And will there be a certain job that might be eliminated? The answer is yes. But likely for every job that's eliminated, something else is created. And I'm taking the high road and believing in that and staying focused in on what we're trying to do. We're not trying to reduce headcount. We're trying to improve profitability. And so if I have to spend a little bit more money to make more money, I do it all day long, right? I can't
Absolutely.
save myself into profitability. I need to do that smart. I think that's what most business leaders are learning right now.
Tom, you used a reference to telephone operators using one peg and the other. I don't know how many of our audience would be able to relate to that, but I can. I know what that is.
Well, that was the most polite way of saying, boy, Tom, you sure are old.
As you stare into the future, what concerns you the most about our industry, and what can we do to better prepare ourselves?
I'm generally an eternal optimist, so I don't know if I can tell you I have lots of worries and concerns. I'm a believer that you make the best of what you plan for, and if you don't plan for something, then you're in trouble. I'm a consummate planner. I'm probably a better long-term planner than I am in the moment. So what I worry about, I worry about catastrophic events. I worry about war. I worry about those types of things that impacts people's lives that hurts our industry. But those things we've got going on right now in certain parts of the world is inhibiting people coming into our country right now. I hope that we can find solutions. That's not a political statement. It's a person who leads a business that says the more that can come to our country, I will benefit from in my business. And I hope we can find those things. I worry about always about people. That's who make our business come to life. We can build anything we want with brick and mortar and equipment, but spirit and how personality is brought to life. I want to make sure that the young children of my family, the grandchildren, they know they can find this industry and it'll treat them fairly. They'll get an experience, and that we got to keep showing that this industry can really do great things for people, not just in their wealth, but in their experiences of life. And I want to be, evangelical about that. I want the world to know that this is a great industry, and that I've met some people along the way that have shaped my life, shaped me the man, not the hotelier or business leader, but just the man. And boy, I hope other people can get that same benefit for it. So, I worry about it, but I don't lose sleep over it. I lose sleep about when people's lives change, and somehow that will impact our business. But let's just do good things for good people.
Well said. It is an incredible industry, an industry obviously we have loved, the largest employer, if you look at collectively on travel and tourism. Yet the industry does get a bit of a bad rap, and possibly it is because people don't understand. It seems incredibly glamorous from the outside. I can tell you, I came in the industry thinking that I would be having martini lunches. And when I got to the point, there was no lunch, much less martini,
I
because
can relate.
i- if you could barely inhale your food, you were successful. Tom, I could sit here and spend another 20 hours talking about
Wow.
these things. Just a quick fire things, single word answers, if you would. If you could change one practice that our hotel industry takes for granted, what would that be?
Multilingual. I would love our organization to all train people in multilingual skills.
Amazing. Remarkable hospitality. You talked a lot about service in the earlier conversation. Remarkable hospitality. If I was writing a book and I was going to use your quote in it, what would that be?
Love the person in front of you. Give them your very best, and they'll in return give you that back.
Okay. Your all time favorite hotel resort amenity, and one amenity that you used to see that you wish would go away.
Good question. I have a little bit of a Southern upbringing. There's a little gift called a Circe. Circe is a pillow favor of hospitality, Southern hospitality that it's put on your bed. Today we call those pillow favors. But even if you come stay at my home, you get a little, my wife calls it an on the bed prize, and it's very customized. It's thoughtful. It's not just a chocolate. It's something that's meaningful. I love that as an amenity when I travel somewhere, and I was just somewhere over the weekend, and I got a pair of socks because I they know I like to walk, and they were logoed socks, and I'm an early morning walker, and it had a little note on where I should walk. Now that was much more memorable than getting the expected bottle of wine or box of chocolate. So something that's thoughtful and customized. What would I want to go away? Man, that's a good one. Bad free coffee in the lobby.
Uh,
We
uh,
got some of those properties that give away just no disrespect to our coffee partners, but some really average coffee and not in the right type of cup. And I'm a coffee guy in the morning, and I have great appreciation for someone who provides a thoughtful choice of tea and coffee. So let's get away with the old stuff and bring in the new.
I'm with you, 100% with you. On personal front, when Luersen family goes on vacation, beach or mountain?
I'm glad my wife's not on this show. Um, she would definitely go to the beach, and I would definitely go to the mountains. And in my house, that means we're probably going to the beach because she's in charge.
A- And keeping on that vein, your personal top destination that is still on your bucket list.
I've had the pleasure of going to so many great places. I would say I went to Italy and I went to a small town called Cortona, and I stayed in a 700-year-old villa. Mamacita was running the villa home, and I have taken so much from that experience and brought it into Coral Tree. The personalization, she greeted me at the front gate. Each night, she wrote my family a little note. We all had different breakfast choices. She just went around, asked us, never wrote it down. And the next morning we showed up and each of us had our favorite things. It was hospitality personified. So it just happened to be it was in Italy. Didn't matter where it was. So those are the experiences. I love, we have a property called Terranea. It's in Southern California. And my wife loves it. It's right on the beach in Palos Verdes. And there's a beautiful trail that surrounds the property. And I look forward. I go there every month for meetings. I look forward to that walk because I know when I'm done, someone's going to see that I've got a little sweat on my brow, going to ask if I want a cold towel and a glass of water, and they're going to talk to me about the trail. And that's not going to be scripted, it's going to be personal. So it's one of my favorite walks in any resort I've ever been in. And I have put on hundreds of thousands of miles, I'll guarantee, over my 40 years in resorts and cities. And those are the things that make the difference. What's interesting is that it's not, none of my stories have to do with the bed or the marble on the floor. It's all got something to do with someone who touches you along the way.
It's funny you bring up the story about your experience in Italy. I have a similar story of staying in a farmhouse, and honestly, I joke around with people that I could count the number of springs in the mattress. It was that that. Uh, uh, memorable, but we still to this day we still talk about what a wonderful stay it was. It was a farmhouse. The owner would cook whatever you wanted and very, very hospitable. I didn't speak a word of Italian and she was using an interpreter. But we would have the most wonderful conversations. It was just amazing. To this day, we talk about that. Tom,
Hmm.
thank you for joining the conversation. Loved it. Sorry that I kept you a lot longer, but I was having too much fun. So hopefully,
I,
we'll have you back before too long. This episode will have to be continued.
I look forward to that. And I tell you, your passion for what you do shows up in the way that you show up. And it's fun to have conversations with people who are thoughtful about our business and feel full of gratitude. So thanks for inviting me on.
Thank you so much.